that we cannot spend more than what's coming in.
I think it's important that you keep experience there now because there's a lot of big issues out there.
I believe that Winchester today is a better place than it was 3 years ago.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Alan Iden, and welcome to TV19's Decision 94 coverage. We're here live in the TV19 studio, and joining me again this year is Alan McDonald.
Great to be with you again.
Pleasure is mine. And we also have the privilege of being over at Town Hall. Sandra Rogers, our veteran TV19 personality, and Selectman Bill O'Leary. And I hope they can hear me. Can you guys hear me over there?
Yes.
Yes, we can, Alan. We can hear you very, very clearly this year, unlike last year.
You're over in the Selectman's office, I believe, and you're going to coordinate our activities of collecting the results from the town clerk's office just below you, Sandy?
We will be coordinating the collection of results downstairs from Carolyn's office. Bill and I will also be talking occasionally about things that are going on, trivia matters about elections past. We have some interviews taking place over here. We have a couple of things going on over here.
Great. Bill, nice to see you in front of the camera here.
Thank you, Alan. As unaccustomed to being in front of it as I am, I'm looking forward to tonight's election. I'm sure all the candidates are happy that it's 8 o'clock now and they're at home, hopefully drying off and warming up and looking forward to the results that Cable 19 is going to bring them tonight.
Let me ask you, Bill, are you happy that you're not running this year?
2 years ago, I had the fun of being in a day like today, an election with Jerry Paul-Carey and Bob Deering, and when 8 o'clock came, I went home and took a hot shower and stayed in it for about an hour, and I'm sure that Donna and Steve and Peter and the rest of the candidates on down the line are hopefully doing the same thing right now. It gets pretty cold out there.
Yeah, it has been a pretty miserable day. All right, well, look forward to going over to you guys there very shortly.
Thank you, Alan.
What a miserable day.
It's a tough day. It seems so often that the town election has a rainy day and a cold, windy day sometimes to boot, but still, when we have the good races, people do turn out. We've had up to 57% turnout as recently as 3 years ago, and the towns in this region have had a pretty low turnout, frankly, over the last few years. There have been a number of articles about some towns with only 15 to 20% turnout. We really had, through the early 80s, the late 80s, a 28% turnout, which was still ahead of most communities, but went up considerably from 88 right through to last year. We were 30% and above all those years. The turnout won't be as heavy this time because of the weather, because of the only a few town-wide races, and not as many town meeting member races as we've had in the past, but still we have some very interesting pieces of information and political activity to talk about tonight, and I'm looking forward to that.
It does, yeah, I am looking forward to it too. It does test the mettle of candidates and their supporters on a day like this. I know I went up to Vincent Owens School at about 2:30 to vote, and candidate Steve Powers was there, and he didn't look too happy about the weather. He said he was confident about the election, but nobody looked too enthusiastic about standing out there in that cold, wet.
Well, when you start at 7 a.m. standing outside, by the time the mid-afternoon comes, you are ready for a coffee break.
But on the other hand, you know, we've been here some years when the candidates have rolled in here for their interviews with sunburns.
True, this is right. They're not always miserable days for sure, but the good organization, if candidates have good organization and a good team, the weather doesn't affect that much as far as their particular vote goes. And in fact, sometimes the better organized candidates hope for poor weather so that their team will be the only one that will show up.
Right.
And we'll see how we do this year.
Everybody seemed to be there. Well, let's discuss what we have on the election slate, and hopefully it is 8 o'clock at night, and hopefully everybody has got out there and done their civic duty, cast their vote.
That's right.
Or votes.
Yeah.
We have our perennial candidate, John Sullivan, is running once again unopposed for moderator. And then as we move into the selectmen's race, it's one of the two contested races. We have incumbent Peter Van Aken, incumbent Stephen Powers, and the challenger is Donna Marie D'Agostino. We'll go down right through the slate here, and then come back and maybe talk about some of these races.
That'd be great.
For assessor, we've got running unopposed. We've got Eric Josephson, and he is a candidate for re-election. On Board of Health, Dorothea Soper is also running as a candidate for re-election. For 3-year terms on the Planning Board, we have Peter Kelleher is the challenger, and Richard Welch Jr. is an incumbent. However, they will both be elected because there are only 2 seats. Our other contested seat is the 2-year seat on the Planning Board, and those candidates are Arthur Agnew and Stephen Parkhurst. On School Committee, we have 2 slots to be filled, and we have 2 candidates, incumbent Edward O'Connell and Kathleen Bodie. 1 candidate for re-election for 3 years to the Library Trustees, Board of Library Trustees, and that's Lane McGovern. And rounding out the town-wide offices is 1 4-year term on the Housing Authority, and we have Marianne O'Brien from Chestnut Street.
That's right.
Back to our, as I said, we only have 2 contested races here.
We do. The Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board for a 2-year term. And in the Board of Selectmen race, the kinds of things that we'll look at, Steve Powers, who's running now for the 5th time, has had 1 run for School Committee and 3 runs for Selectmen. 1 when he lost just before the year he won in 1987. Steve lost a close race at that particular time with Tom Schmidt and Bill O'Neill in the race, and Tom Schmidt topped the ticket. It was a 1-seat race, and the next year Steve came out and won his Board of Selectmen race, and then the 1991 race. In all those 4 elections, he has won Precinct 6. He's been first in Precinct 6, and whether it's a 4-way race or a 3-way race, and that's one that we would look to as a bellwether for his election. He would hope to do well there, I'm sure.
And that is his home precinct.
It's his home precinct, and it's one that he's finished first in each of the races, no matter how he's finished in the overall. Precinct number 8 has been one that he's done well in, and then in some races, depending on the candidates who are strong in Precinct 8, not as well. He's finished first or third, or first or third, and that's one that we'll be watching and hope that he has some showing in that for his team. I think in the Donna D'Agostino piece, she did very well in her write-in campaign for Planning Board across the precincts. Her weakest precinct for write-ins was 8, so that's one where we'll see if she does some improvement as far as teamwork and team building in the votes that she would get. Peter Van Aken has been overpowering in precincts 3, 4, and 7. His one time out running for selectman 3 years ago, he was very strong in 3, 4, 7. Had really no weakness, frankly, but probably in the precincts 2 and 8 and 1, there might be some opportunity for those challenging him to pick away at some of the votes there. But those are the precincts we'll be watching. For those who know they have strong precincts, and I would expect that would be Donna D'Agostino in 5, and 3 and 4 she may do well, as we have seen Peter Van Aken do. We'll watch all that, and as the precincts come in, we'll be able to tell a little bit from those in the early going what we might predict for the 8 precincts altogether.
And as we said, we'll be getting our precinct results our election results directly from the town hall. Sandy Rogers and Bill O'Leary are over there, and we'll be bringing us the results as they come into the town clerk's office.
I should say, Alan, on Steve Powers, it was really Precinct 1 that's the up and down one for him. Precinct 8 he has been relatively strong on. I was saying 8 and thinking 1, but that's the one where I think it'll be an interesting one to watch.
Our other contested race, of course, is, and we should make sure everybody understands, there are 2 planning board races, and we'll put those races in quotes. There is a 3-year seat on, 2 3-year seats on the planning board, and 2 candidates. So they are uncontested with Peter Kelleher and Richard Welch.
Right. Richard Welch is running for his 2nd term, and Peter Kelleher for his 1st. Those are uncontested. And in the 2-year race, we have Arthur Agnew running, and we have Steve Parkhurst running. Steve Parkhurst, who is a former school committee chairman, former member of the finance committee and active in town affairs, and Arthur Agnew, who's a native of Winchester and has been a resident back again since the mid-'80s and interested. He has a commercial real estate background, and both gentlemen running for the 1 seat that's a 2-year seat on the planning board. So that'll be an interesting race, and really we have no immediate past figures to go on there, and they both live in a similar area of town, precincts 3 and 4, so we really don't have too much to guess on early. Those results will be interesting for each precinct that comes in.
will, and I'm told we have our first report in. Our roving reporter Carolyn Schatz has a report here from Peter Van Aken's headquarters, and let's go to her and see how candidate Van Aken is doing. Carolyn.
Thank you, Alan. I'm here with Peter Van Aken, who is seeking a second term as selectman. How do you feel it went today, Peter?
Well, it was cold and wet, that's for sure, but I think it went well. The turnout is quite low, but really appreciate the people that came out to vote, and also very much appreciate the people that came out to hold a sign for me and urge others to vote for me.
What did you find that people were most anxious to talk about during this particular campaign?
Well, I think the topic that was most on people's minds was trash. Trash, trash, and more trash. As you know, we do a lot of campaigning visibilities, holding signs and so forth up at the transfer station. And people up there obviously had that subject on their mind, and the fact that we're looking at the possibility of raising fees there after a long period of not having a fee increase is a topic of a lot of discussion, and we get a lot of good ideas and feedback and points of view up there.
This is your campaign to get a second term. Why did you feel that you wanted to run again?
Well, I think there's some unfinished business. We got some things going in the first term that I was particularly interested in. One of them is elderly affordable housing. And we're at a point now that I think another term will really get us well underway on that project, and I want very much to be a part of it and make sure that that happens. And I think there's some other things. We have some major projects in construction. The library renovation is underway, the water treatment plant, and things of that nature. And I have developed, I think, some knowledge and experience and expertise that's directly relevant. I'd like to bring that to bear.
What's it like to run a campaign in a town like Winchester?
Well, I think it's a lot of fun because the town is small enough that you really get to know the folks on both sides, in terms of the people that are supporting you and the people that are supporting other candidates. And you also get a sense of history and the fabric of the town and how we got to where we are. And it's a learning experience, and it's a very enjoyable one for the most part.
Well, you've said in the past that being a selectman is an important role in terms of encouraging citizens to participate. What did you mean by that?
Well, I think there's two parts to that. One is I think the selectmen have an opportunity to serve as a role model and to show others by example, if you will, that it's very satisfying and enjoyable to put time into projects which you can help with and help other folks at the same time. And I think the other thing that's important is that the selectmen make a number of appointments to committees. Last night, for example, we made appointments to the Conservation Commission, which is a very important citizen committee, and the selectmen have a lot of opportunities to do that, and I think those are important responsibilities, and I think the standards that we set are high, and I think that says something, and the results speak for themselves. I mean, the thousands of hours that are put in by citizen volunteers all over this community, night in and night out, is just stupendous, and the town is ever so much better for it, and a much different town than it would be if we had to buy those services from someone else.
Were there any real high points in this campaign for you? It's probably seemed a little shorter than the last one. But...
Well, it was a campaign that was relatively condensed toward the end. Some of them start earlier. And I think as running as a first-timer, last time I had a tendency to want to get out and get my name out in front of the voters earlier. Running as an incumbent, I think there's a little bit different feel to the process. This was not, as you know, a campaign in which there were a lot of burning issues and a lot of contested races, so it had a very different flavor than 3 years ago. But it was certainly an enjoyable campaign for the most part, and just as long as you remember you're in New England and the weather comes along with it.
Is there anyone special that you'd like to thank?
Yes, thank you very much. I would certainly want to thank my wife and family in particular, not only for support and help during the campaign, but also for support and understanding during the term of office, because anyone who serves in these positions, I think, knows that you give up a fair amount of free time, and some of that comes out of the family, and I really appreciate it. And the other person is Abby Hurlbut, who was my campaign manager, and I want to thank her for a terrific job well done.
Well, we'd like to thank you very much for being with us this evening.
Thank
Peter.
you. It's been my pleasure.
That's it with Peter Van Aken for Decision 94. I'm Carolyn Schatz. Back to you, Alan.
Thank you, Carolyn, for that report with Peter Van Aken. Again, one of our selectman candidates for re-election. We also, by the way, have planned some other reports from Carolyn this evening. We'll also have a report from veteran commentator Bob Gallant, who is seen now about once a year on here, and his reports we always look forward to looking at a
Very much
different point of view, or taking a fresh look at some of the things in town. We have also invited, or I should say I invited the retiring school committee candidate, Connie McCool, to come down, so we hope if she's watching us here that she accepts the invitation, and we'd love to have her come down and chat with her about her years on the school committee and her well-deserved retirement.
She's an outstanding example of the kind of citizen we get to serve this town in the town-wide capacity. Connie's had 12 years of dedicated school committee work and a number of other activities on behalf of the community as well, and we certainly hope she does come down, and by no means do we believe this is the last opportunity we'll get to see her helping the town of Winchester. She's done a great job.
She has. Alan, we're going to go over to the town hall now, and we've got Sandy Rogers there with candidate for the 2-year seat in the planning board, Stephen Parkhurst. Sandy.
Hi, we're back again. And I have with me at this point the candidate for the planning board. This is the 2-year seat on the planning board, Steve Parkhurst. The other candidate is Arthur Agnew, and we hope that perhaps we'll have a chance to talk to him tonight as well. But welcome Steve Parkhurst, who I just understand hasn't run for office for 24 years. What you have to understand is that Steve has lived in the town as a child, grew up here, went to school here, etc. During the time of his adulthood, he ran, I certainly know, for the school committee because he served on the school committee just prior to the time that I served. He's been on the FinCom. He's been a town meeting member. Yep. You've held several offices and been very visible here in town on various occasions. Steve went to Cape Cod for a number of years, is now back in Winchester, and of course the first thing he does when he comes back to Winchester is to run for office. So, after 24 years, how would you characterize this particular race?
Well, the race was fun to do. It was a contested election. It was not as arduous as the campaign I ran for school committee in 1970, but it was still fun to do. It was fun to have contact with the press and the League of Women Voters and have a chance to meet the public, and it's been a fun campaign. I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Well, what we normally think of a campaign, of course, as most of you know, is standing at the transfer station. I call it the dump, but it is known as the transfer station. Holding signs. I didn't see you on street corners holding signs. Your campaign was mostly written or being on TV, or what? Did you do
Sandy, that's right. No, I did not campaign at the dump this year. I guess having done that once, I thought that was enough back in 1970. But I did it through the newspapers, really, with photographs and interviews and Channel 19 and through the newspapers in Winchester. But in terms of having signs in my car or having a campaign organization, no, I did not do that. I think my opponent chose not to run a very vigorous campaign either, and I guess we both took our cues from each other, and therefore it was a rather low-key contested election, I will admit.
Mm-hmm. I know. You saw mostly members of the Board of Selectmen candidates out there with signs and doing what we call the normal campaign type effort and all that kind of thing. But I did notice, or at least I hadn't seen you out there, and maybe I had missed you, but I had a funny feeling that both you and Arthur were running kind of a low-key type campaign.
That's true. We did make some joint appearances with the selectmen. Right. I'm fond of saying we were the Fab Five this year. Mm-hmm. Reminds you of the University of Michigan, I hope we end up better than the University of Michigan did when they were the Fab Five, but anyway.
Well, I think one of the things that was interesting to those of us who watch elections was the fact that it was the 2-year seat on the planning board that became the contest. The 2 3-year seats, of course, are not contested. Both candidates are, at this point, elected. But what was it that was about the 2-year seat that you really wanted, number one? But number two, at one point, there were 3 candidates, and one of them stepped back. Obviously, you and Arthur did not. What was the compelling reason for the 2-year seat? What was the thing about the 2-year seat that got to you, that you wanted to not only run for it, but also hang in there?
We'll address the 3-year seat first, Sandy. I mean, they were both incumbents. Richard Welch had been on the board for 3 years. Peter Kelleher had been appointed by the Board of Selectmen. And I felt they really should have the opportunity to serve again. I think they've done a good job. But the 2-year seat being where there was no incumbent, I felt that was a good way perhaps to get started in the planning board. So yes, I don't know why the third individual dropped out, but when it became a contested election, I said, fine, I'm perfectly willing to run. I think the citizens should have a choice, actually. I mean, that was one reason I ran, because it's unfortunate that there were so many uncontested races. I think it's better for the town if the voters have a choice, and if the campaigns are more visible and the issues have a chance to be debated and so on. But that was really not so much the case in the planning board, but at least the voters had a choice, and I'm glad that was the case.
Yes, exactly. So is there anything special that you'd like to say while you're on TV here? Is there...
No, at this point, I have no idea whether I want to.
You're not having campaign anymore and explaining, why you want to be on the planning board, but as I say, if there's anything special you'd like to say.
Well, I would look forward to serving. I hope the voters put me back in office. I would really like to do it. I think I have some skills I can bring to the office of the planning board. As I said during the campaign, it is an important board. It's up to us to interpret the zoning bylaw and our subdivision control regulations, and really to work with the developers to accomplish projects that are in the best interest of everyone. So if I am fortunate enough to be elected, I would do the best I could and hope we can maintain the standards and do the job right. And I look forward to working with the other boards and the other members of the planning board and the town engineer.
Well, we certainly wish you the very best of luck.
Thank you. Yeah.
And we'll hope to.
We'll know in an hour or two.
That's right, as I say.
whether we made it or not.
Soon.
But
no,
thank you for the chance to be interviewed. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Steve. That was Stephen Parkhurst, and now we're back to the studio again.
Okay. Thank you, Sandy and Stephen, for joining us down there at the Town
Arthur's
Hall.
here.
Yeah.
Once again, if you're just joining us, we are live here in the TV 19 studio with our Decision 94 coverage. I have to keep remembering Decision 93, Decision 94. The years go by so quickly. Tonight we'll be getting reports from our reporter Carolyn Schatz on some of the with some of the candidates, both contested and uncontested races, I believe. We will be hearing from veteran TV 19 commentator Bob Gallant, and we may be meeting some of the victorious candidates and maybe some of the not so victorious.
Certainly hope we are.
And of course, once again, joining me here is Alan McDonald here, as usual.
If we could, I don't know if we have a minute or two, Alan, I just was thinking, you've mentioned the uncontested candidates, but Eric Josephson's running for his second term on the Board of Assessors, and he's uncontested for that. Dorothea Sapa is running for her fourth term, actually at this point for the Board of Health, and she's uncontested. Richard Welch, as we know, we just talked about with Steve Parkhurst, is running for re-election for his second term, and Peter Kelleher, who's just been appointed by the selectmen, but running for his first elected term. Ed O'Connell on the school committee, who's had 25 years of elective office in the town of Winchester, is running for his third term on the school committee, and of course he's had 3 terms with the Board of Selectmen and serving the Library Board of Trustees, and 25 years now, going for 28 with tonight's election. And Kathleen Bodie is running for her first term on the school committee, and as we saw in the campaign and the discussion, the Legal Women Vote is very capable, full background in teaching and parent association work with the schools, and should bring a tremendous amount to the school committee in her position. Elaine McGovern running for the third term on the Library Board of Trustees, uncontested. a long-time service for the town of Winchester, and Mary Ann O'Brien, who's running for the Housing Authority and is a new term, a first term for her in that particular office. I had some fun today with Carolyn Ward, our town clerk, because we were looking at the moderator position, and of course tonight is John Sullivan's 18th term being elected as moderator. He's uncontested for that, and of course he had 9 years as a selectman prior to that, so he has 27 years of elective office in the town. And we had some fun looking at past town reports because it was our opinion that John was the longest serving continuous moderator in the town's history, and that's true. Matter of fact, last year when we announced John's 25th anniversary of elective office, it actually was his 17th term, which passed Harrison Chadwick. Harrison Chadwick was elected 16 times town moderator from 1956 through 71, and that was the longest term until John Sullivan has gone from 1977 through tonight. This will be his 18th time. It's interesting, but the town moderator position in this community became an annual town-wide election in 1915. Up to that time, in 1850 is when we started our town meeting here, and you see that from the seal, 1850 for the town of Winchester on our seal. We had town moderators elected each meeting, each daily meeting of town meeting. And there were a number who served a lot of years. In fact, we found that John Wilson served from 1872 to 1897, 25 years, but he served with 7 others from time to time. I mean, there were 7 others who were elected for an evening at a time. Certainly John Wilson had the majority of those meetings over a 25-year period, and then there was a 21-year moderator, Oliver Clark, from 1850 to 1871, also serving with a number of others, in fact 17 others who were moderators during that period. But since 1915, when we went on an annual basis, we've only had 8 moderators. That averages out 10 years apiece. We're pretty steady. We don't have a quick turnover in moderators. But during that period, from 1915 to 25, Frederick Manley Ives was the moderator, and then George Haywood for 13 years, Ray Wilkins for 3, Joe Worthen for 5, Philip Wadsworth for 6, Harrison Chadwick for 16, Ray Kenny for 5, 72 through 76, and then John Sullivan since 1977. But that's a distinguished record of service in the community, and it was kind of fun going over the old reports to verify that. We just think it's time to recognize the full-length service we have from John Sullivan and from a number of leaders who helped to keep town meeting strong and stable with a good memory of events while we have a pretty good turnover in town meeting as well.
Let me ask you, you've delved into the history of the town moderator's position. A couple of questions come to mind. Has John Sullivan ever been opposed in his 18 years?
For town moderator, there has been opposition for the moderator's seat over time. Truthfully, I didn't look at all 18 years. I can't remember opposition, frankly.
I don't either.
Other than a write-in.
Well, I'm just wondering if this position is traditionally held until the moderator wants to give it up. I imagine at some point there may be some dissension there and may want to get somebody out of the office, but...
Arthur Hewis ran against Harrison Chadwick, I can remember, and I think Ray Kenny had opposition as well from time to time. As I look back at the records, even back into the 1800s, there was opposition, or not so much before we went to a town-wide vote. Sometimes there was a 4-0 vote that made the moderator for one-night meeting, just enough people to get a vote. But since the town-wide ballot, I did notice opposition from time to time, but it's rare. Just traditionally, the town moderator has been strongly placed and hasn't had a lot of opposition. It hasn't had any opposition, I should say. So. I can't think of
John given any indication of how long he continues this winning streak?
Well, I haven't talked about it with him, but I'm certainly very happy with our leadership. We certainly would root him on for many more years to come.
You're right.
That's right.
Wish him all the best of luck. Okay, we're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, Carolyn Schatz will be talking to Donna D'Agostino, candidate for selectman. So stay with us. TV 19's Decision 94 coverage will be right back.
programming that I used helped them to look at how art in the Egyptian culture helped to develop all those ideas in the areas of culture and religion and values.
We focused on current events, also CNN in the classroom that we use every single week. We focused on that, so they're getting the news into the classroom. But these students are a product of the visual medium. They understand it, so it's just it's natural, it's logical that you're going to incorporate that into the classroom.
So you're a senior this year, getting ready for college.
Uh-huh.
Sports, too.
Uh-huh.
Studies, sports, and a job.
Uh-huh.
I guess you have to pay for your car.
I can handle it.
Uh-huh. A student's most important job is getting a good education.
Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of sport, the thrill of victory, and the agony of defeat. The human drama of athletic competition.
All right, we're back. I'm Alan Iden, and joining me here in the studio once again is Alan McDonald. We're live here with TV 19's Decision 94 coverage of the Winchester town elections. And I think we've got a report coming in from Carolyn Schatz, who is talking to Donna D'Agostino. Donna is the challenger for the Board of Selectmen's position. Once again, one of the two contested races we have here in town this election night. The other being the two-year slot on the planning board, and we spoke a few moments ago to, Sandy spoke a few moments ago to Stephen Parkhurst. Carolyn Schatz is out, and I believe is about to file a report from Donna D'Agostino's headquarters.
That'd be great. Donna's been chairman of the planning board, as we know, and very active with the planning board and on so many town civic groups and committee activities, and she's looking for a chance to do a little bit more even, and so it'll be interesting to hear from her again tonight and to talk with her as the results come in as well.
It's going to be interesting to see what develops in this race, as we should be getting election results in shortly, but we have two strong candidates for re-election. Stephen Powers for his second shot, his third term rather, has finished 2 terms as a member of the Board of Selectmen. Peter Van Aken going for re-election after one term, 1 3-year term. And like you said, Donna is known around the town.
Very well.
She has served on the planning board, but also a lot of other boards and civic activities, I believe, in the town.
Well, she's done all of that, and you're right, all 3 candidates are very strong for the Board of Selectmen. Peter Van Aken ran very, very well 3 years ago. In fact, outstanding, as I said, in 3 precincts, won by significant margins, and then did well in all precincts, frankly. Steve Powers has run well, pretty strong, all 4 times out prior to this, and has not shown much weakness, just some, depending on who the other candidates were, stronger in some precincts than others. And Donna did a very good job of organizing a write-in campaign in the planning board race 3 years ago when there was an opening, and that's a hard thing to do, and it showed strength across the precinct line. So she's shown strength in that particular area, and it has only built since that time. So it'll be very interesting to see what the town-wide vote would be from the strength of that team building.
Let me ask you, Alan, you're a former selectman. We got Steve Powers running. If he is successful tonight, he'll be serving 9 years on the Board of Selectmen. Burnout?
That's a lot, and the burnout doesn't happen that much. I should say that for those who really are dedicated to the assignment, there's plenty of opportunity for new issues coming by all the time. What you do find in the selectmen and other boards as well is that when you do serve for a length of time, your hours build up. You might the first year only do 5 hours to 10 hours a week, perhaps, as the more experienced, longer serving people have got more assignments. But as you build the time up to 30 and 40 hours a week, it's occupying your attention from other things. And it just depends on what your outside activities are, whether or not you can maintain the real strength to do that. But there's an excitement about it. 9 years is a lot, but when you think of the people who've done it, John Sullivan, Eddie O'Connell, Arthur Dunbar, all people who've been energetic, done very well for the community. So it depends on the individual. Certainly you do find a lot of hours going into the assignment the longer you're on it, no question.
You know, there is a temptation to look at what we have here tonight for election townwide offices and say that we only have 2 contested offices, and to tend to make some generalizations about apathy. But I think if you step back and you look at it, you really can't say that, because you have so many volunteer positions in town. You have so many people who serve on 1 board, 2 boards, 3 boards.
Awful lot of quality folks.
It doesn't have to be an elected position.
I mentioned the people already. You did also that are running, that are uncontested, quality people that we're delighted are serving the community. And you're right. It's not necessarily a sign that we aren't going to do well in our public service. It would worry me if there were openings and nobody running for those seats. But when you have very, very good people step forward, we're grateful for that. And when you look at the town meeting members, we have in our town meeting 32 people after tonight's election, and we know that they will be elected because there are only so many candidates, sometimes 24 for 24 seats. So we know they're going to get reelected. We have 32 people in town meeting out of 192 that have been elected once or more often to townwide office. There's a dozen former school committee members. There are 10 selectmen or former selectmen. There are half a dozen planning board members. That's a terrific amount. That's 1 out of every 6 town meeting members has held townwide office. So as we say, we're going through a turnover, and we go through about a 10 to 11% turnover every year, about 20 new members to town meeting each year. We'll have a few more this year because of openings. We'll have about 30 to 40 new members this year, almost a 20% turnover in 1 year. That'll be almost a 3/4 turnover over a 6-year period. That's a little more than some, but then again, when you have the stability of the town-wide office holders, even in the recent years and prior, I mean, we have, so it gives us some continuity. We have people in town meeting who were elected to town meeting in 1947, Mike Sirocco, 1950 selectman Harry Shepelo. We've got people in town meeting who served as a selectman in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. So we have a tremendous institutional memory in town meeting, and also a lot of new blood. So I'm very encouraged by the people we see serving the town of Winchester, and the fact that some years we have less contests than others. As long as we keep getting those great people to come in and volunteer, we're going to be doing fine.
We'll be talking about the town meeting races. We haven't really touched on them at this point, but I think Carolyn Schatz has a report with Donna D'Agostino, our selectman candidate, the challenger for the Board of Selectmen, and let's go to that right now. Carolyn.
Thank you, Alan. I'm here with selectman candidate Donna D'Agostino. Donna, what has today been like for you?
Today has been very exciting, adventurous, cold, wet, and damp. We have done a lot of work today. I don't know what more we could have done. We have called everyone we know. I've even had to babysit so people can get to the polls and vote. I've driven people to the polls. We've held our signs. We've worked very hard today. And as I said, I have to give credit to all my sign holders. I had ice hanging from my sign at one point today, and everybody deserves a round of applause for the hard work that they've kicked in today.
So how do you feel it went today? Do you have any idea?
I have no idea. I have no idea. You know, you can call people, but you can't physically drag them to the polls. I'd love to pull the lever for them, but I can't do that. So it will be very interesting, and that's what's been interesting about this campaign. It's been difficult to predict. We just don't know what will happen.
Well, you've served on the planning board in the past, and now selectman is the role that interests you. Why did you change?
I felt as though that I have accomplished some very important zoning changes on the planning board, and rather than get stale, I've always been intrigued with the Board of Selectmen. I've always been interested in the broader aspect of the job that the board performs, that I felt as though it was time for me to move on. It was a natural progression. The time was right for me, retiring as the current chairman of the planning board, and I thought I would create an opportunity for someone else to serve. And I felt as though it was a great opportunity for me. The time was right for me.
You've been involved in a family business here in Winchester for some time. Could you, for people who don't know what the D'Agostino's do, can you tell me something about it?
Well, the family business is not here in Winchester, which is surprising to many people. Our family business is in Boston. We would love to have a business in Winchester, and maybe that will happen someday, and that's why we're involved with the Chamber of Commerce. We hope to do that at some point.
What did you find as you were campaigning that people in the town seemed most interested in?
I was surprised that people were interested in a transfer station fee when it really was not an issue. I think what was difficult in this campaign is that there were not issues to address. And going to coffees or functions, people did not even know what questions to ask. But what surprised me towards the very end was the interest in additional liquor licenses. That surprised me because that never really became an issue throughout the campaign until there was some publicity done towards the end of the campaign.
That's interesting. And what are your feelings about that?
I got many positive responses that there were citizens of this community looking for expanded liquor licenses, but you don't know until you're actually going to take a poll of all your constituency out there. But that was very interesting to me, that is what caught people's attention.
What were the high points of the campaign for you?
The high points were all the positive responses as you're standing out there morning and night on the cold street corners. We all know March is not the best month, but people were very reassuring. People gave me encouragement. I have to say, if it wasn't for my husband, I could not have done it. He was the pillar of support. He's been out all day. I couldn't even get him to change his jacket. But the receptiveness by this community of having someone new run for office is very reassuring, and it's very encouraging to anyone out there considering a run for any seat on any board in this community.
This is a good place to run for office?
I think the community has always been receptive to new candidates running for office. You know, there's a time where there's an opportunity for everyone to serve. Fortunately, in this community, you don't see signs posted, lifetime tenure, no one need apply. And I think the message is out there that there is room for turnover and there's room for fresh blood serving in office in the community.
Are there any people that you want to thank especially?
There's one person out in the audience that I cannot thank by name, but I think he knows who he is. And there were just so many people to thank, but at the top of the list is Ed D'Agostino, my husband, who is the one that encouraged me from the very beginning to go for it. He felt as though I put time and effort into the planning board and it was time to move on. And if I was going to spend that much time, then I should dedicate my time to the planning board. And he's been with me all the way. He has taken time off from work to help me out. We've always had a family joke that even at my funeral, the business would be open. But I've had to laugh. He's been home every afternoon to help me sign hold on the street corners. And that's a wonderful experience. And I will never forget just the conversations we've had with all the sign holders out there. So I have to thank everyone for being so receptive. And it's been fun. I have to say, it's actually been fun.
Well, thank you very much. It's been fun interviewing you. Donna D'Agostino. For Decision 94, I'm Carolyn Schatz. Back to you in the studio, Alan.
Thank you, Carolyn. Carolyn Schatz there with Donna D'Agostino, the challenger for the one of the seats on the Board of Selectmen. Let's see. It was kind of interesting listening to her comments, about the spirit of serving, and the fact that they jive nicely with your comments about the fact that we have turnover, we have new blood, and we have continuity.
It's exciting to run for office, in my opinion. It's fun. You meet so many great people and new people, and there's a bonding that takes place, and certainly through the election day, a tremendous spirit. As I have often said here, it's like Christmas Eve for the candidate tonight, but Donna expressed that, and what I am particularly pleased about too is that she has felt that the town was receptive to new candidacies. I think that's so important in keeping the lifeblood of the community, that you can see good people continue to come on the scene, serve, and there is a turnover. There is, if not a burnout, an opportunity where the lantern is passed, and I think it's very healthy, and so it's great to hear that that's the way the candidates view it, and I hope that will continue.
And we'd just like to know who the mystery supporter is.
Oh, well, that's right. That's great.
Didn't thank by name, and
oh, that's a good way to do it, because a lot of people could say, I think she's talking about myself. See, that's very
really.
good.
Just giving a little intrigue to the evening.
That's great.
Let's talk about some of these town meeting member races, or lack of races. We've got some huge turnovers in 4 of the precincts.
We do. We have, the interesting thing this year that our viewers and voters should know, and maybe they already do, is that we redistricted the town in 4 of the precincts this year. Always we have to balance the 8 precincts so that we have a relatively even number of voters in each of the precincts versus all the others. In 1987, we redistricted all 8 precincts, and that particular year, all the precincts had 24 races for 24 seats at least. As you may remember, those who are voting, we elect 8 town meeting members per precinct each year for a 3-year term. So there are 24 for each precinct, and they're on a rotating basis, 8 each year for a 3-year term. But when we redistrict, all 24 get elected at the same time. And the top 8 vote getters get 3-year terms. The second top, from 9 through 16, are going to have 2-year terms, and then the bottom group will have the 1-year term and run again next year. So we found in this particular year we had to redistrict 4 precincts, 1, 2, 7, and 8. Now, I think a masterful job by the town clerk's office on this, and then the Board of Selectmen votes on it, but the town clerk's office worked it so that we have 1 sitting town meeting member who was affected and has to run in a different precinct. That's Tony Conti, who was in Precinct 2, is now running in Precinct 1. He's on Harvard Street. Everybody else that's a town meeting member wasn't affected because the drawing lines weren't seriously different. The biggest difference was between 7 and 8, where Middlesex has a line down the middle of it now, and then on the cemetery side of Middlesex, that'll be Precinct 7. It used to be Precinct 8, and that's the biggest drawing line change. But I think it was a great job of not affecting too many voters and too many town meeting members to have this run. Now, what's happened in that is that we've had less candidates come out. In those 4 districts, 1, 2, 7, and 8, we have all 24 seats available, and that's a lot for 1 year to bring in a lot of new town meeting members. We had, from 89 to 92, we had an average of 100 candidates for 65 to 69 town meeting seats in those years, so that was pretty good. If we go back before that in the 80s, the average was about 77 candidates for 69 spots, so relatively close. Last year we went back to that average, and this year we actually have a few openings. We have 133 spots being elected with 126 candidates, but because of races in those seats, we actually have 10 openings without candidates, and we have opportunities for write-ins, or if not write-ins, election at town meeting for 5 seats in Precinct 1, for 1 seat in Precinct 7, and for 4 seats in Precinct 8. So what could be interesting tonight is to see what happens in those write-ins. We don't have quite as many contests as we have in past years, but my guess is that in the next couple of years we'll see the same cycle that happened after 87. When we redistricted in 87, we only had 212 candidates for the 192 spots because all 8 had 24 apiece running. We only had 20 extra people running for the 192 spots, and we were saying, gee, that's not a very competitive situation. What happened by 1 year from then, we wound up having 100 people for the 64 to 69 traditional spots, and that held for 4 years.
Yeah, we did see some pretty heavy contests. I recall some of them in the past years saying 16 candidates for 8 slots.
That's right. And so we have a little less this time, but I think part of it's due to the redistricting, and part of it's due to the cycle that says we bring in so many new members, and as I said to you earlier, from 1989 through the 93 election, we brought in an average of 21 new town meeting members each year. So an 11% new face look each year, and this year it'll be a little more. We actually have an opportunity for up to 40 new faces, and certainly over 30. And that will be a high change in 1 year's time. But as I said earlier, given the continuity of the leadership and the long-term service folks, so we think there'll be a nice blend of the new blood and the continuity, the institutional memory, we call it. So not as many contests this year, but what will be interesting to the viewers is in precincts 1, 2, 7, and 8, the top 8 vote getters have 3-year terms, the next 8, 2, and the final group, 1-year term. So that will be a matter of great interest. To me it will, and I think it will be to the viewers.
Okay, we've got some results beginning to come in, but we're going to take a quick trip over to Town Hall at the moment there. I believe Sandy Rogers and Selectman Bill O'Leary are over there. I see them shuffling papers around. You guys hear us?
Yes, we can hear you all right. We are certainly shuffling papers around because the results are beginning to come in. And of course, the immediate result is for the two of us to not only copy down as fast as we can, but start adding up to see who's doing what in this race. It might have been a quiet election. It might have been a bad day, but certainly people were out there voting. And we now have the results from 4 precincts, and it's becoming very much fun over here, frankly.
Yes, Sandy, the hard work is going to pay off for 2 of the candidates for the Board of Selectmen tonight, and those results will be brought to you by Alan Iden in our studio at the high school. One of the things that goes into a campaign for townwide election is money. And we have available to us tonight from the town clerk's office the campaign finance reports of the 3 candidates for the Board of Selectmen, Peter Van Aken, Stephen Powers, and Donna D'Agostino. As required by law, the 3 campaigns filed their reports 8 days prior to the election day. And the reports are pretty routine, but it's interesting to see how much it costs to run townwide. The Van Aken campaign and their preliminary report reported receipts of $4,915 collected through direct fundraising. They had several donations over the $50 amount, but the majority of them were under $50, $2,590. And like most campaigns here in Winchester, they spent their money on printing, postage, and newspaper advertisements in the Daily Times and the Winchester Star. Similar to the Van Aken campaign for this 94 campaign, attempting his 3rd term on the Board of Selectmen, Stephen Powers from Precinct 6, sometimes known as the Selectman from Lexington, his campaign reports $5,045 raised in campaign receipts, most of those from a fundraising event which was held at a local restaurant. The majority of the expenditures for that campaign, again, similar to Mr. Van Aken, were for printing and postage. The notable exception being the cost of the restaurant function that the Powers campaign held. Planning board member vying for a seat on the Board of Selectmen, Donna D'Agostino. Donna's report shows receipts raised of $2,161. These were from individual donations, but again, mostly from donations under $50 from members of the community. And her costs, similar to the other 2 candidates, were for printing and postage. Even though the town is probably going to only show a voter turnout tonight of approximately 20%, these candidates spent a considerable amount of money and time, as did their volunteer organizations, to advance their cause across the town, as Sandy indicated earlier, through traditional methods of standouts, newspaper advertising, and TV and newspaper work. Thank you. Sandy?
Yes, I wasn't sure whether we're still on. But what I'd like to say, frankly, is that very often people look at what we call the financial reports of a campaign because there is a correlation between what you spend and who might be a winner. And you also have the bad weather, which favors incumbents. So keep those 2 things in mind, and our results will be coming in. Thank you.
Sandy, Bill, you look very official there. You look like Chet Huntley there. Can you cover your hand over the ear there? And,
Oh, dear.
well, we'd love to know what's distracting you over there, though.
Well,
We've got the
we have so
figures.
many people here over there at the high school studio waiting in line for the figures that are sitting here on the table, and they're gesturing and making different hand signals to us that you can't see off the camera, and we're just trying to keep our composure due to the excitement of the results, which are being run up the stairs as soon as they're coming in. They're only preliminary results, but they're coming in from Carolyn Ward's office very quickly. We have the results now preliminarily from precincts 1, 3, 5, 6, and 7.
Well, okay, thanks. You're keeping your composure very well. We'll try to keep ours over here the same. Thanks, Bill and Sandy. All right, we got some results in. Let's take a look at the results from Precinct 1. And let's move into our Precinct 1, of course, is in the north side of town, upper right-hand your picture there. And we're looking at, I guess we could go with this contested races here. Here we go. And the results in the contested races for selectmen, we have Peter Van Aken, an incumbent, with 274 votes, Steve Powers with 299, and Donna D'Agostino, the challenger, with 158. And let's move on to the planning board, the 2-year planning board seat. And we have Arthur Agnew with 76 votes and Stephen Parkhurst with 235 votes. All right. Let's, any early surprises or anything of that?
Well, I would say I don't know if it's a surprise or not. It's an indication. I said earlier in the evening that Precinct 1 was a swing precinct for Steve Powers. He's finished first, third in his 4 times out on Precinct 1 is sort of a swing precinct for him, and here he finishes first. Very strong showing for Steve Powers in Precinct 1, and I think that would have to be a very strong bellwether for him. In Precinct 1, Mr. Parkhurst, of course, has done very well against Mr. Agnew, and that's got to be very encouraging to him. As I said earlier, we don't have current figures to compare there. Steve Parkhurst last ran 24 years ago, as we know, but that's certainly, whatever the prior figures would have been, that's an impressive showing for him, and he's got to be quite pleased with that. Can't tell everything from one precinct, but I think in terms of bellwether, I had said earlier in the evening that Precinct 1 itself was kind of a swing for me in comparing the Steve Powers vote from prior elections, and that's a very good vote for him. So if that held for him in the other 7 precincts, that certainly would be a good news for him.
Alan, as we said, that we have results in for Precinct 3. Let's go take a look at Precinct 3's results. And looking at your map here on the screen, you see Precinct 3 is smack in the center of the town there, covering the most of the center. And Precinct 3, you're polling at Lincoln School, seen there in your picture. And there are results from Precinct 3. We see Peter Van Aken was the top vote getter for the selectman's seat with 277. Stephen Powers also right up there with 211, and challenger Donna D'Agostino at 156. And on the contested planning board seat, take a look at that. There we have Arthur Agnew with 81 votes and Stephen Parkhurst 207. Okay.
Well, Steve Parkhurst has to be very happy with that. And precincts 1 and 3 are different voting histories. There are different blocks as we've looked at the 2.5 override votes. Only precincts 3, 4, and 7 have voted in favor of an override. It's a little more progressive, I guess, type of a voting district than a number of the other precincts. And actually, Steve Parkhurst has to be very happy with doing well in both precincts because they're a different kind of vote on the philosophical side of things sometimes. Certainly, Peter Van Aken has done brilliantly in Precinct 3 in the past and continues here. He's won Precinct 3, and 3, 4, and 7 for him I think were the strongest before, and he continues to do well. But that's sort of a swing precinct for Steve Powers as well. He's had some weakness there in the past in some areas. He's done fairly well, and Donna D'Agostino has a good representative vote there. I think she would expect to do better in 5 and 4 and 7 perhaps, and we'll see how that is in her vote. It's too early to tell yet, but I would say the 2 incumbents have done well in those 2 precincts for themselves, and that the Donna D'Agostino vote is a good base that she has an opportunity to build on in the other precincts. We didn't have a prior town-wide election to compare on that, as I say, and her strength is town-wide, but maybe perhaps even better in precincts 5, 4, and 7. We'll see when those votes come in.
We will see. We have results coming in now, but let's, Carolyn Schatz is talking to our incumbent candidate, one of the incumbent candidates for selectman, and she is over there with Steve Powers. Carolyn.
And I'm here with Steve Powers, who's running for selectman. Steve, how do you feel it went today?
I think, you know, in general, people look like there was a lot of seniors out there voting, which is usually encouraging for me. My people were working very hard. I'm sorry that the weather wasn't good. I generally don't bring good weather when I run, unfortunately. But, you know, in general, I think we were encouraged by seeing the many seniors that went out to vote. And I think that, you know, that will bode well when we finally get the results, in my opinion.
So you don't feel the weather was really a factor today?
Oh, I think it was definitely a factor in keeping the vote count down. I think we had worked very hard. I think the Van Aken campaign worked very hard. I think the D'Agostino campaign. Everybody worked hard for an election where there wasn't a school committee race. There was only a planning board for a 2-year. I think everybody worked very hard, and I think the turnout would have probably been much better had there been another race in there. I think you might have been in the 40–45% area. I'm not sure what the numbers are, but we did see a lot of people out there.
What did you find people were most interested in talking about as you were campaigning?
People were interested in the transfer station. They were interested in their MWRA cost. I think they're interested in the finances of the town, how we're going to get through the next 3 years. And I think they're interested in, you know, whether, you know, experience is important, and also where you stand on particular issues to do with education and education reform.
Well, you have been on the school committee, you've been a town meeting member, this is your 3rd time running for selectman. What makes Steve Powers run?
I think I can answer that very simply. I grew up in this town. I've been here for 45 years. I was in Reading for 5. I run because I like the people. I have a genuine like for the people in Winchester, both the old ones and the new ones. And I think that I like to leave something with the town, and that's why I serve.
What's it like running in a town like Winchester?
I think it's very challenging. The people are very intellectually smart. They ask good questions. I think they want good candidates. They want good credentials. And I think that they're generally supportive. You can start a conversation with anyone on the corner store. You can go to Purity, you can go to White Hen, you can go to the Dairy Barn, you can go anywhere, and people will be glad to talk local politics and issues that are of interest to them. And I think that's stimulating for someone in office to at least know that they're interested.
And who's helped you with your campaign? Who would you like to thank especially?
I would say Peg Perenick mostly, who drew most of it. I had 3 co-chairmen, but I think of the 3, Peg Perenick worked the hardest. Danny Sirica, my treasurer. Marcia Saltmarsh worked very hard. Francine Foley, they were a great team to work with. They sort of push me around, and I guess I need that because I tend to go my own way and wander a little bit sometimes, but they kept me on the straight and narrow, and I think that they're, you know, really great people to work with, and I appreciate their work. Also, former Selectman Bob Deering worked very hard with me on corners, holding signs, and I appreciate that muchly, as did Bill O'Leary, who's on the board. And I don't think that that's a problem because I think equally they supported another candidate that was also a sitting selectman.
Well, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, and I hope the results are good.
Okay, that's it from Steve Powers' home. Back to you in the studio, Alan. I'm Carolyn Schatz.
Thanks very much for that report with Steve Powers, and the candidate for re-election for the Board of Selectmen. And we are here, once again, we are reminding you that we are here live in the TV 19 studio with our Decision 94 coverage of the Winchester town elections. And once again, I'm Alan Iden. Joining me here in the studio is Alan McDonald, and we have Sandy Rogers and Bill O'Leary over in Town Hall doing their job to keep the results coming into you this evening. Looks like Steve is out to an early lead with the precincts we've got reported here, 1 and 3.
He's done very well in 1 and 3, and it's too early to tell from that, but certainly Both incumbents did well against prior performances, and Donna D'Agostino has built a nice base, and the question is whether or not the vote in the precincts that are closer to her home base will be in large enough numbers. And as Sandy has already said, the one concern in a time with a low turnout is it's very difficult to make up large numbers in a low turnout. I don't agree that it always helps the incumbent. I think that well-organized campaigns, be they incumbencies or challenges, can do well in poor weather. But I think poor weather or lack of town-wide interest has meant a lower turnout this year than in other years, if indeed that 20% is right. And just by sheer numbers, it's difficult to catch up in any amount that you're behind in a precinct if you don't have a lot of voters come out. So we'll see what happens in some of those other precincts. And I think some of those are coming in, and I'm anxious to see them.
We do. You know, we have results coming in. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be right back with you. Decision 94 will return in just a moment.
Or just build this megaplex with a mega-sized dome and not have a team to play inside it. But they can be competitive because they do have a co-op where they can buy the drugs in same.
Gas stations, a lot of them now are also convenience stores. They sell a lot of products.
Well, I guess I glorified that a little.
Hi, everybody. Mike Lynch from Channel 5 here. Next to Sports Center 5, my favorite sports show is Sports View, 7 o'clock Thursday nights with Greg and Dale. Don't miss it. No home should be without it.
New England doesn't just work 9 to 5 and shut down on weekends. It makes money, makes excitement, makes trouble, makes history, and makes it happen 24 hours a day, every day of the year. So those are our business hours, and our business is bringing you more of the news that hits closer to home than any other channel. Introducing New England's own 24-hour news channel, New England Cable News. Only New England, only on cable.
Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of sport, the thrill of victory, and the agony of defeat. The human drama of athletic competition.
You've just been looking at our remote crew over there in Town Hall, Bill O'Leary and Sandra Rogers over there keeping an eye on the results as they come in from the town clerk's office just below them in the selectman's office. And once again, we're live here in the TV19 studio here with Decision 94, the town election results. I'm Alan Iden. And
Alan McDonald. See the pencils flying over there, so I'm very interested to hear what the numbers are.
Well, we're getting some numbers in here. I think we're ready for our Precinct 5 results.
Okay.
So let's go and take a look and see what we've got in from Precinct 5. And there is Precinct 5 in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, the southwest corner of town, over in the Myopia Hill area. Polling place in the background, Vincent Owen School. And here are results, 227 for incumbent Peter Van Aken, the selectman race. Stephen Powers with 248, the lead in that precinct. And Donna D'Agostino with 181 votes. And moving to the contested planning board, the two-year seat on the planning board. Take a look at those results. Arthur Agnew with 91 votes, and Stephen Parkhurst with 213 votes. Again, there's your polling place in the background, the Vincent Owen School. Here we go.
Well,
All right. Look at those effects. Huh?
Those are very good, the visual effects. The results in Precinct 5 would show where both Steve Powers and Peter Van Aken have been fairly strong, not overwhelming, but fairly strong in past elections. It's an area where I would expect to see Donna D'Agostino do fairly well because it is home base, and that's an area where she could pick up some numbers. I think part of the turnout problem could be in effect here. Certainly the two incumbents did very well. Steve Powers winning Precinct 5 is an important thing for his campaign. Peter Van Aken doing well there is important for him too. There's swing precincts in a way. Peter Van Aken would be strongest perhaps in 3, 4, 7 given the last races, and Steve in 6 and 8 and doing well in 5. But I would see in Donna's campaign 3 years ago, her strength was in the 4, 5, 6, 7 area particularly, and this is one precinct that with a bigger turnout she may have gotten more votes, but in fact it's going to be difficult to make up those numbers unless she does very well in 4, 5, 6, 7. So we'll see how it comes out. But the two incumbents did very well there for their votes.
They have. Well, let's move on right now, Alan, to Precinct 6. And there's Precinct 6 in the western part of the town, bordering Lexington and Woburn. And let's take a look at those results. Where we are at Vincent Owen School, a polling place. And not much of a surprise here. We got Peter Van Aken with 177, and Steve Powers in his home precinct with a very, very substantial lead, 295 votes there, and Donna D'Agostino coming in with 129. Let's take a look at the two-year seat on the planning board, and Arthur Agnew with 86 votes, and Stephen Parkhurst with 189. No surprises there on the selectmen's race.
Steve Parkhurst, of course, continues to do well and has to be very happy. In the selectmen's race, as we said at the start of the program, Steve Powers won Precinct 6 in all 4 of his other races. He had to do well there. If he didn't win Precinct 6, that certainly would have been a question mark as to how the rest of the campaign could be viewed, but in the other precincts. But his winning 6 was anticipated. We talked about that earlier, so he's 5 for 5 in that precinct. The question there is how close do the other candidates come with the opportunity to make up those votes elsewhere, and we'll see from the other precincts. That's an area, as I've said before, where Donna D'Agostino has an opportunity to do well. It's difficult in Precinct 6. Now it has to be in 4 and 7 that we'd have to see the numbers improve there, but certainly, again, strength for the incumbents and a not as large a turnout for the challenger at this particular time.
Well, let's, without too much further ado, let's move right on to Precinct 7. Precinct 7 results, and there on your map is Precinct 7 in the center there. Looks like bordering on Horn Pond and moving down into the flats area. And Precinct 7. Let's take a look at those results. We have, in the selectmen's race, Peter Van Aken is the leader in this precinct with 318 votes. Stephen Powers coming in with just a little bit behind, 293, and Donna D'Agostino with 179. And Arthur Agnew on the planning board, the two-year seat, 1 seat available, 98 votes to Stephen Parker's 280. And I think we have the Morocco School in the background there, I believe.
Certainly.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
That's the Lynch voting place and the playground and that sort of thing. But certainly the 24-year layoff didn't hurt Steve Parkhurst and his particular ability to go get votes. He's doing quite well, and he has to be pleased with that. Precinct 7 is one that Peter Van Aken did tremendously well 3 years ago, and of course, wins again tonight, so he's got to be very pleased with that. Steve Powers ran strong in 7, and it's been a precinct that he's been okay in the past, but not as strong as Peter Van Aken, but he's run close to Peter Van Aken. And again, in Donna D'Agostino's case, there may not be enough voters turning out to make up the difference at this point, but those numbers are not a surprise in the sense that Peter Van Aken was expected here to win Precinct 7 and did. I think the interesting story here is how well Steve Powers did in Precinct 7 in staying close to Peter Van Aken, and the question mark again in how many votes that Donna D'Agostino can get to make up the difference. And now as we see more than half of the precincts, we know that Precinct 4 has to be a very good vote for her, which it certainly could be, so we'll have to see how that is.
We'll keep an eye on that. We have, like we said, we have 5 of the 8 precincts in. We are still waiting for results for precincts 2, 4, and 8. And while we wait for them, I think we should, we're going to have a report here from our veteran commentator, Bob Gallant. And we have a commentary on town elections, I believe. Very appropriate. And let's hear what Bob Gallant has to say about the current situation in the town of Winchester.
Happy anniversary, Alan. According to my records, this marks our 10th year of announcing the winners of local elections. But that doesn't make us veterans in this business. Compared to the Academy Awards, we're still working on our tenderfoot badge. Last week was their 66th year of announcing winners. And as far as ratings are concerned, we're several light years behind them. They average 25 million viewers, while the only ones that we're really sure of, besides those here in the studio, are our families and friends. Well, some of our friends. Maybe. Of course, tonight, we might have done better if one of us had braided his hair like Whoopi Goldberg. But that's not really why there's such a huge viewer discrepancy. No, the real reason why the Oscars attract more viewers is because there's more suspense in their elections than in ours. Every single envelope they open has 5 possible winners inside. How about us? In all but 2 of our categories, we don't even need to be handed the envelopes to tell you who the winners are. In 75% of our races, there's only one candidate running. So like it or not, that candidate is automatically elected. Now, how can we expect to keep our viewers on the edge of their seats when 3/4 of the local contests have about as much suspense going for them as a one-horse race? On the other hand, I do recall a one-horse race back in the 30s that was pretty suspenseful. It happened when a famous horse, and I think it was Seabiscuit, wound up as the only starter in a major stakes event. So, instead of running against other horses, he ran against the clock. Now, maybe we could do something like that to spice up these uncontested elections. We could run the candidate against the blank ballots. If there were more votes than blanks, the candidate would be elected. But if the blanks outnumbered the votes, the candidate would lose. Think about it. No election would be a shoo-in. If you didn't fancy the only candidate running for an office, you could defeat him by going to the polls and not voting. Now, that would create more suspense, and it would also encourage candidates to promote competition in order that they might lose to somebody instead of nobody. And when you come right down to it, isn't that the real secret of suspense in any election? The competition for the office? It's pretty obvious that fewer people are inclined to run for office these days than in the past, and it's due, I think, to the growth in a very little known social disease, the Sherman syndrome. Of course, you're all familiar with the one who originated the disease, William Tecumseh Sherman. William Tecumseh Sherman, in case you've forgotten, is in the history books for three reasons. First, he was the Union general who burned down the city of Atlanta in the movie Gone with the Wind. The second, he was the one they named the Sherman tank after. And third, he was the guy who told the Republican Convention of 1884, "If nominated, I will not run. If elected, I will not serve." Now, some people think those words were spoken by Calvin Coolidge, but they're wrong. Calvin Coolidge never spoke 12 words all at one time during his entire presidency. Anyway, that's the so-called Sherman syndrome. Don't run and don't serve. And it's reaching epidemic proportions in Winchester politics. Case in point, today's contests. Only one of the planning board positions and the 2 selectmen openings had more candidates than available seats. The rest of the races were like a game of musical chairs, only everybody was already sitting down. How could anyone lose? Except maybe those who lose out on the chance to revitalize local politics. The question is, why are so many of us reluctant to run for office? Some say it's apathy, which my dictionary defines as a lack of interest in or concern for things that others find exciting. Well, that could be. But there seem to me to be more specific reasons. Maybe we don't run because we're satisfied with the incumbents. So how come we grumble about what the incumbents do or fail to do in between the elections? We can't be all that satisfied. Maybe we don't run because we feel we're not qualified. So how come so many highly qualified people show up at the selectmen's meetings, seeking to be appointed to very responsible positions? Maybe we don't run because we don't have the time to go to all those meetings. So how come all the social and recreational activities in town don't shut down because of lack of attendance? Maybe we don't run because we are afraid to lose. So what about Abe Lincoln? The first time he ran for representative, he lost. Then he ran for senator, and he lost. Then he ran for president, and he won. And then, of course, he got shot. So sometimes it's really better to lose. Maybe we don't run because we can't afford the cost of campaigning. So how come all the pros say that in local politics, the most effective campaigns are those based on word of mouth, which costs nothing. And maybe we don't run because we figure that's somebody else's job, not ours. So if we all felt that way, there would come a day when nobody would run for office. And if nobody ran for office, nobody would get elected. And there'd be nobody around to run the town. There'd be no elected town officials, no town meeting members, and no town meetings. Which would mean that the Winchester Star would no longer twinkle, the Times Chronicle would have no times left to chronicle, and the town crier would sit down and cry. And you and I, Alan, you and I would have no more winners to announce. And so we would all be losers. Maybe we'd be better off if we braided our hair like Whoopi Goldberg. Alan?
Thank you very much, Bob. It's always good to see Bob back here.
That's great.
Bob is timeless.
Getting younger every year. It's an amazing thing.
He really is, and we would love to know what his secret is. I suspect, knowing Bob, it's his sense of humor.
He's got a great sense of humor.
He does, and started working with him back in 1982 when I first took the course here, and was privileged to work with him for a few years with News 19.
Well, you don't look a day older either, actually. So now that I think about it.
Well, we're going to have results in a few minutes from precincts 2, 4, and 8. In the meantime, let's go back. We kind of cut our conversation short on the town meeting results. We commented, you were talking about redistricting, the fact that precincts 1, 2, 7, and 8, everybody's running all over again, and the fact that the top 8 will be 3-year.
Right. The top 8 vote getters will have 3-year term. The second 8 will have a 2-year term, and the third group will have only 1 year and run again next year. And we have in Precinct 1 exactly 24 candidates running for the 24 places, so we'll see how that divides up. In Precincts 2, 7, and 8, we actually have less candidates running than the 24. We have 5 openings for write-ins in Precinct 2. We have 1 opening in Precinct 7. We have 23 candidates for 24 spots there. And we have 4 openings in Precinct 8. So we see contests in Precincts 4 and 5 where we have 10 candidates running for 8 spots in Precinct 4 and 10 candidates for 9 spots in Precinct 5. So not a lot of races this particular time out, but again, as I said earlier in the program, a lot of quality in terms of new names, new blood, and some long time serving members as well. But we're looking forward to seeing the results in those 24 candidate precincts, 1, 2, 7, and 8, as to who gets the 3-year term and who gets the 2 and who has to run again next year for town meeting.
Let's see. I had a thought about precinct 5, and I lost it. We have
well, where we are right now in our precincts that we have in 1, 3, 5, 6, and 7. We have a tally in the selectman race of 1,346 for Steve Powers, 1,223 for Peter Van Aken, and 803 for Donna Marie D'Agostino. But we're missing precincts 2, 4, and 8, and those will be very important precincts to get in.
Will be coming in the. I'd say in the planning board race, it is pretty clear that Stephen Parkhurst has an, I would say, insurmountable lead at this point.
Parkhurst has run very strongly in each of the precincts, and be very difficult with only 3 precincts out for him to actually catch up with Steve Parkhurst. Not that we declare winners ahead of time, but certainly Steve Parkhurst has got a considerable lead there and has to be pleased with his re-entry into town elective politics after his hiatus from the school committee, where he was twice chairman back 20-plus years ago.
I think from Sandy's earlier interview with him, he's just recently moved back into town, but he is a Parkhurst name, I think, is a very well-known name, and I think that's probably done him very well in this election.
Long time family service to the town of Winchester prior to Steve, and certainly through Steve's work as well. So I think that has been recognized, and he's certainly going to have an opportunity in the planning board to do some good work.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's take a swing back over to Town Hall. Sandy, pull yourself together there.
I know they can see me.
Yeah, we can see you. We can see you. Now, Bill's the one that's composed, and you're the one that's fiddling.
Well, I'll tell you why I'm fiddling is because I had to run downstairs. The runner that we had running from Carolyn's office to us here in the Selectmen's room didn't appear for quite a bit of time. So I was sent downstairs to find out what was going on, and what I was trying to do was get my mic back on, get my earpiece back in, so that now I can tell you what's going on downstairs. The thing that has happened, apparently, and the reason why we don't have the figures on the last 3 precincts, and the reason why we are jumping around here a little bit, is that there's a computer glitch, and we don't know when we're going to have the figures. Apparently, everything has gone into complete stall downstairs. However, by calling into one of the campaign households, we now, of course, have the figures, but they're not the ones from downstairs. So with that, we know who's won, but I don't have the official figures from downstairs, nor do I know when I'm going to have them. So after having said that, and now you know why I was fiddling around, and Bill's the one who looks so composed for a change, we had a little piece that we want to do about life as a selectman back in the days of yore. And what David Anderson from TV 19 has done is put together a little piece from the town books to tell us what, in fact, the selectmen did back in the early days. And maybe my guest here, who's on the Board of Selectmen, should either read this or talk to you about what the Board of Selectmen members used to do, and the fact that they used to have to run every single year, like the town moderator.
Thank you, Sandy. As many of you probably know, the selectman form of government is one of the oldest forms of government in North America, and it originated right here in New England. The selectmen's responsibilities have changed immensely over the years. In the 17th century, Winchester, which was then formerly part of Charlestown and then Woburn, like most of other New England, was a Puritan town, and it had very high religious morals, and those morals were enforced. It was the selectmen who kept a very careful oversight over the morals, conduct, and religious practices of all of the townspeople. They would fine people for drunkenness. It was also part of their duty to see that people went to church, behaved themselves, and brought up their children properly. As the town grew, so did the demands for services and the need for greater expertise in town officers. And the tradition changed from an annual election to the Board of Selectmen, and this was done in 1937, and the town meeting voted to increase the terms of the selectmen from 1 year to 3 years, and those 3-year terms are what we call staggered terms. That's the current system that we operate under. That way there'd always be experienced people serving on the board instead of a complete turnover. Before this, some for as many as 11 one-year terms in a row, so apparently term limits weren't in vogue then, and it doesn't appear that they might be in vogue tonight. Thank you, Sandy.
Yes, you're very welcome. But is there anything else, Bill, that you found yourself in perusing town books? Because I know you came in here with some information about selectmen who had run 3 terms, et cetera. I mean,
Well,
talk about terms.
If the trend and the results tonight continues the way it is, one of the candidates may be in a very elite group of those who have been on the board more than 3 consecutive terms, and one of the other candidates may be elected to a second term, would also join a select group of people who've served multi-year terms on the Board of Selectmen and or the school committee, as you did, Sandy, and as Mr. Parkhurst, who was here previously, had. So it's quite an accomplishment, and I think it speaks well for the person who gets that endorsement for the community, that people are aware of what they're doing and support what they're doing. So I think that says a lot for the way the process works here in Winchester. Even if the results weren't that high as far as turnout goes, the weather had a lot to do with that today. There was no override on the ballot, and those 2 factors primarily, I think, drove down the total turnout.
I would agree with that. So thank you, and I don't know what you want to do about figures, but keep in touch with us.
We will, Sandy. We appreciate that little retrospective there. It's kind of interesting. Do you think we ought to go back to a condition where the selectmen are in charge of regulating the morals of the town, Bill?
No, I don't think so. I think the parents should do that.
You don't feel like taking on that job?
No, we have enough to do.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Bill and Sandy. We'll get back to you shortly. So as we figure out what to do about the computer glitch over there.
It's a shame, because we're all ready for numbers, and of course we don't want to have unofficial results go out over the air, I'm sure, but we don't even have the unofficials here, so that puts us at a disadvantage. And we're very anxious to have the official figures, as I'm sure the viewers are, and as soon as we get them, you're going to hear them. So.
We're going to do right now what we do best. We're going to take a break.
Oh, okay.
We're going to take a break. And we'll be back with Decision 94 coverage here at TV 19 in just a moment.
Channel 5 here. Next to Sports Center 5, my favorite sports show is Sports View, 7 o'clock Thursday nights with Greg and Dale. Don't miss it. No home should be without it.
People don't typically think of me as the type of person who would have HIV, but I do.
Find out more about HIV, the virus that causes AIDS.
Build this megaplex with a mega-sized dome and not have a team to play inside it. But they can be competitive because they do have a co-op where they can buy the drugs in the same.
Gas stations, a lot of them now are also convenience stores. They sell a lot of products.
Well, I guess I glorified that a little.
If you think these tunes are classics, wait till you read these. It's true top tunes are timeless, but a good book is never a thing of the past.
There's nothing like a good book, I always say.
Right. So ask your parents to read you one of their favorites, because books are better when they're read together. Tune into Reading, a message from the National Center for Family Literacy and the Cartoon Network.
For some people, doing their tax forms by themselves can make them feel like they're climbing the walls. Free tax help is available from IRS-trained volunteers. They'll make your taxes less taxing.
You've got some money coming to you.
Is that right? Are you serious?
Oh, come on. Yes, 3 out of 4 are getting money.
3 out of 4?
It's amazing. 3 out of 4 who file a tax return get a refund from the IRS.
3 out of 4, huh? They said 3 out of 4. You got your facts straight.
Maybe I'll get one.
It's wonderful if it's true.
So the sooner you file, the sooner you get your money back.
Good, I could use the money. I'd go on a trip. I'd give it to my mom.
It pays to file now.
That makes sense to me.
Good evening, I'm Alan Iden, and we're back here again in the TV 19 studio, and you just saw Sandy Rogers and Bill O'Leary over in our remote studio, and joining me here once again is Alan McDonald. And speaking of Decisions 94, I think we've made a decision here. If you were just listening to us a few moments ago, you would have heard that there is a computer problem over the town clerk's office, which has prevented us from getting our official results from precincts 2, 4, and 8, but we have some unofficial results, and they pretty much fall right in with what we've seen. So I guess we're ready to go out on a limb and.
I think we'll do something we've not done before, and that is take some unofficial results and predict for you, the viewers, what we believe to be the case. We have not seen precincts 2, 4, and 8, but we have seen the official results from 1, 3, 5, 6, 7. And in those results, Steve Powers leads by 123 votes over Peter Van Aken at 1,346 to 1,223, with Donna D'Agostino having 803. Now, unofficially, we hear that the totals, when we get the next 3 precincts in, we'll have Steve Powers at 2,026, Peter Van Aken at 1,870, and Donna D'Agostino at 1,224. It certainly would bear up with what we had from earlier discussions. As you know, we might predict that Peter Van Aken would win Precinct 4. We might predict that Steve Powers would win Precincts 2 and 8. If indeed that happens, the figures we have unofficially have Steve Powers winning by 156 votes, some 33 more than we already have him ahead by. Certainly, if he came out in that kind of a balance with 2 and 8 versus 4, that certainly could hold. And we would expect Donna D'Agostino to get a pretty good vote in 4, and it could be well done in the other precincts as well. We said earlier on in the write-in campaign, the weakest of the 8 precincts had been 8 for her, and that was a team-building area for her. All of this would say that the unofficial results would match up with our own thoughts on this and the 5 precincts that we already have received officially. So we're going to let you know that as we understand it and as we would feel would be the case, Steve Powers would be the top of the ticket for the 3 selectmen candidates. Peter Van Aken would be second, and Donna D'Agostino third. And so the 2 incumbents would be re-elected for 3-year terms. And as you know, Steve Parkhurst is well ahead in the planning board race for the 2-year term, and we would estimate that he would win as well. So that's where we are, and we'll have official figures perhaps before we go off, but that's how we would see them tomorrow when you read about them in the newspaper.
Right. It is pretty clear, even from the results that we had, the official results we had up to this point. While the numbers may change and they may vary, 5 or 6%, right. Probably not even that much, that it is clear that the 2 incumbents have been re-elected to the Board of Selectmen, and that Stephen Parkhurst has been elected to the 2-year seat on the planning board. I've been told we have some of the candidates down here, victorious and otherwise, and they're eager for a chance to address the constituents and their supporters in the town. So we're going to join them, and you're going to join them in just a moment. And we're going to take another quick break and let you get into position. So stay with us, and we'll be right back to talk to some of the candidates here. Great.
Programming that I used helped them to look at how art in the Egyptian culture helped to develop all those ideas in the areas of culture and religion and values.
We focused on current events, also CNN in the classroom that we use every single week. We focused on that, so they're getting the news into the classroom. But these students are a product of the visual medium. They understand it, so it's natural, it's logical that you're going to incorporate that into the classroom.
So you're a senior this year, getting ready for college.
Uh-huh.
Sports, too.
Uh-huh.
Studies, sports, and a job.
Uh-huh.
I guess you have to pay for your car.
I can handle it.
A student's most important job is getting a good education.
Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of sport, the thrill of victory, and
the agony of defeat. The human drama of athletic competition.
Good evening once again. I'm Alan Iden, and we're here with TV 19's coverage of Decision 94, the Winchester town elections. And you just saw a shot from Town Hall with Selectman Bill O'Leary and Sandra Rogers, TV 19 reporter Sandra Rogers, and producer. And now, joining us in the studio, we're going to swing over to Alan McDonald with the candidate for the Board of Selectmen, Donna D'Agostino.
Thank you, Alan. I'm here with Donna Marie D'Agostino, former chairman of the Planning Board and candidate for the Board of Selectmen here in Winchester. Donna, congratulations on a very well-run campaign.
Thank you very much, Alan. I enjoyed every minute of it, and I'm here to congratulate Stephen Powers and Peter Van Aken on their victories, and also to thank them for making it a very friendly campaign, enabling me as a new candidate to have an opportunity to be in the race, and I appreciate that.
Felt you made some very positive comments throughout the campaign, and tonight in your discussion about the excitement of being a new candidate for an office. You're not necessarily a new candidate to town government or to town affairs, but in running for office for the Board of Selectmen, and you did enjoy that, I understand.
I did. I enjoyed it, and I'm here to make my concession speech, but not necessarily my retirement speech. And I will continue my service to this community, I promise.
I would think you might be a little young to retire, and I understand with all the civic responsibilities that you have, you're not allowed to retire.
No, I'm not. In fact, I have some duties that are waiting for me for the NCA fair, and I intend to get on with those starting tomorrow.
This has been an incredible year for you. People are going to wonder how you do it, running events and running for office and keeping all the energy.
I'm very organized, and I have a very supportive husband at home. That helps, and he will tell you when the last time was that I was able to cook dinner. And you'll have to look far back on the calendar to come up with that date.
Well, you did a terrific job, and we congratulate you on that. No, we're going to see you quite a bit around town and a number of things yet to come, and wish you all the very, very best, Donna.
Thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for being with us. Alan, thanks very much for the opportunity to interview, and I'm going to send it back over to Alan Iden right now.
Well, you're going to stay right there, because we're coming right back to you. And I just want to remind our viewers, in case you're just tuning in here, that we do have, our results are unofficial. We received official results from precincts 1, 3, 5, 6, and 7 through the town clerk's office and our crew over in Town Hall. But apparently due to a computer problem, we were unable to receive the official results from 2, 4, and 8. So we have been going with unofficial results here, our unofficial results. So incumbent Selectman candidate Steve Powers with 2,026 votes.